Hi, I'm Jonathan J from dealmakers.co.uk, the #1 place for business buying information. On this video, I want you to meet Andy. Now, Andy was on my Mastermind program in 2018, and the first business that he bought was an absolute game changer. Now, if you haven't been on my free online training, there is a link somewhere on this video. After you've listened to Andy, click the link on the video and take part in that training so that you can do this yourself. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel, tap the notifications bell, and you will receive a notification the next time a video goes live. So let's meet Andy. So Andy, we've known each other now for a number of years. I think it must be about 5 years.
5 years or
now.
so, yeah.
And you were on Mastermind, well, I guess that was 2018. What
yeah.
a great group that was.
Yeah,
I
it was cool.
Many fond memories of that group. Are you in touch with anyone?
Yeah, a couple of people here and there. I can't remember his name now. The guy from Manchester mainly.
Jay, yeah.
And the other guy, the music guy.
Yeah.
Was it Chris?
Yeah, yes, Chris. Yeah.
Chris, yeah. They're the main two. And a few little messages from people on LinkedIn.
Okay, nice.
I met with Jay quite a lot, yeah.
Because I think part of the fun of a group like that is that you all have a common interest, don't you?
Yeah.
And when you get people together with a common interest, it just it gives you a support group of people to talk to, and
just to talk openly to. I think that's the key. People you can talk, you can trust to get what you're talking about. If you've got questions, queries, worries. You can just bounce it off people.
Exactly. And you went straight off that program and bought your first business.
Yeah, within a few months. Yeah.
Which is wonderful. Tell us about that.
So we came off the program. We sent the letters out. We got quite a few back. We sort of did the telephone calls. Met I think 5, and then one guy. You could tell he was genuine. He had a really genuine reason for sale. He wanted to be an ambulance driver because he'd ran his business for 20 years and he was tired, right? It was an area of what I already did in my other life, but, it was e-commerce, which I'd never touched and we wanted to get into. So, we agreed terms and just pushed it all through. I think it's probably about 8 weeks in end from agreeing a deal to diligence and getting it over the line.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because sometimes people think that it takes like a year and a half to buy a business. I guess it could do if it was a big enough deal, but in the SME, small business space, 8 weeks is a little bit more of a sensible timeline.
And I think people get a bit bored of conversations if you take too long. They get a bit they get really excited and they go cold on you, don't they?
You're either doing it or you're not doing it. We can agree terms, agree price. Let's just get it done.
Yeah, and it's a confidence thing. If you go this is the stages. And we're going to buy it. This is the price. This is how we buy it. If they agree that, there's not a lot more to talk about, really. You just have to get the lawyers up to speed.
Yeah, exactly. Which in itself can be a challenge. Yeah, absolutely. If you've got someone good on your side, at least it cuts out 50% of the chances of it going wrong. So you bought that business. Would that have been then in 2019?
Well, in March, we're coming up to the end of the deferred consideration period.
Okay.
Which is a great little celebration we're going to have.
Yes.
So that will be 5 years.
Fantastic.
So we've known each other longer than that.
We must have done.
6 years.
So how's it now going then? So it's now, 5 years later.
It's the biggest part of our business.
Oh wow.
Being e-commerce during the pandemic, e-com went through the roof. So our clients all grew massively, and we've introduced clients to clients within the business, and some have bought each other. We've talked about acquisitions, and one client now, they're turning themselves around from a £30 million a year e-com business, and by March they'll be £100 million a year, and we'll be their supplier for all their e-com services.
Incredible. And how did they get from the 30 to the 100? What was the process?
Acquisitions.
All through acquisitions,
really? So
really?
They went from, when they first worked with us, they were probably, I think, 8. It was before we acquired them. We've helped them grow through having a great sort of offering online to 30. And obviously, and with that, they get some cash flow, I suppose, and they got some investment. So they've created a group. And then they've just been acquiring other like-minded companies.
Interesting.
So, so they've acquired 3 in the last 2 months. And they're going to get another one in February.
Not Chris, is it?
Chris.
It's not there. I've got a client in Mastermind at the moment who's bought 15 e-commerce businesses, and I thought maybe you're talking about about Chris.
No, it's not that guy.
So yeah, Chris is he's based in Manchester, and he's he's just cleaning up in e-commerce. That's very much his niche. So 5 years on, biggest part of your business. I mean, that must feel good.
It's actually to the point where, as we said, I've merged a couple of other companies in, and they've sort of disappeared into the group. But even the original business I had, we've sort of almost not parked it, but we've cut that down now to focus on e-commerce. So it's not just the biggest part of the business. It's our branding and everything is all about e-commerce now.
Oh, interesting. So
it's actually shifted the whole group.
Yeah, so it's changed the focus of the group.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And maybe without that acquisition, you may well have done that anyway, but maybe it would have taken a bit longer.
I don't think we would have. I don't think we'd have had the nous, I suppose, to go, right, actually, let's move into an area of online which we hadn't done before. We've now got our own payment gateway. We've got our own platform. We manage probably 160 million a year in payments through that company. And the push is just that now. And, with acquisitions now, instead of saying digital agencies or anybody in digital, it's anyone in digital who can complement what we do in e-com. So we've actually narrowed our sort of field down. So
am I right in saying then that if we hadn't met, business may have taken a different path?
Yeah. I mean, before Deal Makers, it was all sort of, we tried to do all the experiential type stuff, digital wars, events, things like that. Now that world has just got harder and harder. There's software which people can just do it themselves. Okay. There's basically, to be brutal, there's no money in it anymore. Right. And they're really exciting projects, but you might get 2 a year now, where we used to get offered 10 a month and turn 5 down.
Right.
So, we had to shift, and that was, but meeting you and then going, right, actually, we can grow a different way. And it was sending out letters and to see what comes back in the digital space. Yes. I mean, it could have been someone doing
It's interesting, actually, that this very old-fashioned approach, this direct mail approach, works so well, even with digital online e-commerce businesses.
100%. Yeah. I mean, we're just going through it at the moment, and it's amazing. Just, the emails you get back, some of them apologising that they hadn't responded quicker and things like that.
Oh, that's nice.
It's great.
And I think, without naming the event, I believe that I was speaking at a conference.
At Heathrow.
At Heathrow, yes. And you were in the audience.
Yeah.
And I believe that you may have told me that you didn't have enough time to buy a business.
Yeah, that was one of the first things. I remember going up to the table and said, look, I'm really interested, but I'm busy. I haven't got enough time to do this.
I remember talking to you.
Yeah. And the fact is you have. The reality is, and as it grows, you get more time.
Exactly. In actual fact, when you grow your business by acquisition and you have a bigger business, then you can invest in a management team 100%. That gives you more time. So the people who have the least amount of time are the people who are running the smaller businesses, doing a bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, when I look back, I used to do obviously the sales, I used to do account management, I used to deal with the accounts in Xero, ringing the accountants, helping do the company returns. I don't do any of that now. We've got an MD in place who's, to be honest, better than I was at running it.
Well, that's always the goal, isn't it? Yeah. You hire people better than you, yeah.
Yeah, he's great. We've got a lady who was in one of the companies we acquired, who at the time was an admin, and we just realised she was amazing, and now she's a director of the company and pretty much runs all the day-to-day stuff. Yeah.
Very good.
And then one of the co-directors of the original company, she sort of runs the operations, and all I'm doing now is coming in when they need it. If they say, can you come in for a chat through something, we just want your opinion. And I'm literally in the last quarter said I'm going to do about a day a week focusing on acquisitions again.
I'm interrupting your video with a very important message. If you are watching a video like this, it's probably because you're serious about buying a business. But watching free videos on YouTube will only take you so far. You need to take the next step. And the next step is a link that's somewhere on the screen up at the top. which takes you through to our free video training. There's no cost whatsoever. You watch the free video training and that will give you some of the essential basics that you need. Now, if you get value from that, then I would invite you to be part of my next Fast Track program. Now, the Fast Track program has been running for a couple of years now. We've had nearly 3,000 people around the world on the Fast Track program, and it's a Zoom program that you can attend from anywhere. It's broadcast from my living room to your living room, where I will teach you what you need to know to go and buy your first business. And there's a Q&A section at the end of each of the training sessions, so you can ask me all of your questions. Now, if you get great value from that and you're really serious about buying a business, then there's my Mastermind program, a 12-month program where we hold your hand through the business buying process so that you can buy your first company. And when you have, I'll invite you into our inner circle, which is exclusively for people who've bought their first business. So that's what we've got lined up for you. It's up to you whether you take the next step. Anyway, back to the video.
So there's a couple of things there. So let's talk about management team, because a big concern of new business buyers is who's going to run the business once I bought it. And I always say, well, if the only person you can think of is yourself, then that's the wrong answer. You need to find someone else. So what would you say to someone who's concerned about making sure that the business is run properly by someone else and it doesn't involve them?
I mean, it depends on their situation. If there's someone already running a company, they should sort of look at what they're doing now and go, well, why am I doing everything? Why can't the business afford people in it to help run it so I can step back and do other things and grow and focus on growth? So that's the first question. And then if you're already doing that, then you can look at your model and question that on the model of another business. So that's the questions you ask, what's the team? How's the business working?
Yes.
And, I did a phone call last week and I was like, so what happens when you're not here? Who runs it from your point of view?
Good question.
Just ask the question and be upfront about it. And, you always get the answer, I've got the most amazing project manager and they're doing this and I've got the most, because everyone's got the most amazing.
Well, what they've done is they've read a book about selling a business.
Yeah.
And the first page says, your business value is impacted if the business revolves around you.
100%.
So they don't get past the first page. So as most people who read books don't get past the first page. Yeah. But on that first page, it says that piece of information. So they then feel that all they have to do is tell you, I've got nothing to do with it. It all runs itself. The reality is often quite different, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think, and the secret is, and again, it's back to doing the sort of 12 months with you, was you don't get yourself attached to any of the businesses while you're in that process of negotiation, because, that the whole, would it be all right? It'll be all right. It just won't. I fell for that once. I got quite attached to a business, bought it, and it wasn't great, and it was a good learning curve.
Sure.
It was actually a learning curve to buy assets, not shares of that one. But, I got too excited, right?
Oh, did you? So you bought the shares rather than the assets? But if you bought the assets,
the business would have been fine. I could have created a new co, removed all the debts with HMRC and VAT, and that would have been enough to sustain it. So, yeah, but that was okay.
But this is all part of you live to fight another day,
and we had warranties, right?
Yeah,
and
there
was
can't
undisclosed
win them all.
stuff.
I mean, if you're going to do multiple deals, there's always going to be one in there that wasn't as good as the others.
100%. And and you have to look at the positives. It was another one we got over the line. It was another one we found. And on paper, you go, okay, there was a position there. And then when it came to the reality, that position was different. And you think, well, what will I do different next time? And what I would do different next time was in the period between initial conversations and diligence, because this one dragged on a bit, back to what we said earlier. I would sort of go, right, actually, let's just put another bit of effort into make sure the business is the same as it was 2 months before, 3 months before, I think it was. Because a lot can happen in quarter of a year with a business.
Yes.
And if we'd have done that, we'd have realised in that 3 months, there was things put on credit cards which weren't there before, e.g. HMRC and VAT.
Okay.
So
you're saying that the financials that you saw took you up to a certain date, but the business had declined since then, but that wasn't so visible to you.
Yeah, it wasn't visible at all until we signed it. But we had warranties in place. We had all things in place to say, we're buying this, and And if it's not this, and we discover this within 90 days, any debts come off the purchase price
Absolutely.
of the business.
And don't you have, I seem to remember when we talked about this before, that you've got a very neat way of not paying anything for the first 90 days.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
So we always say with a business, because we don't, I always use the analogy, and I think it's probably one I've stolen from you, but...
Are you going to quote me back to me?
Yeah, I am, yeah. But, when you buy a house, it's got 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and a garden and a drive. And when you turn up, if one of the bedrooms is missing, you're going to be miffed. A business is the same, apart from you can remove the bedroom, right? It's a moving object. So, and we're quite firm with it. We say to people, when we buy the business, before we pay any initial payment, we want a period, and we always try 90 days to make sure the business is what you've told us it is, because we feel that anything which will come out of the woodwork will come out within 1 quarter of a year. And we get pushback from it, but then we just say no. It's like, no, that's how we do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think saying no and understanding what works for you in your sector is very, very important.
100%.
Because otherwise you become a motivated buyer. And you end up saying yes to everything because you're so keen to get the deal, and then end up with something that you don't really want after all.
Yeah, something where it's a lot more effort, or there's your plans of when we get this adds the revenue to the group, and it's going to achieve X, Y, and Z. If that's going to take 2 years longer, that affects everything else you want to do.
Yes.
So it's just being a bit stronger and going, we don't need to buy anything.
And people do struggle sometimes with saying no, don't they?
Yeah.
And people struggle with pushing back, and they don't want to offend the seller, and they want to make sure everyone is all friendly. And I think it's important to keep a cordial relationship. There's no point falling out with the seller. That's not going to get you the deal. But you do need to know when to stop and to say no and to ask for something in return, because it's all a negotiation, isn't it?
It is. I mean, a perfect example was 18 months ago, we really got quite deep into diligence with the company. We got a valuation done via our accountants and gave them a document, published it and said, this is why your company is worth this. And they said it's not enough, which is, that's okay. Sure. That's fair enough. I'm just saying that's what it is. And we walked away, and I said, look, if you change your mind in the next 12 months or 18 months, come back to us. Because they, like any seller, they said, oh, well, we're going to build the business up almost, we'll show you how much we can make this worth. They came back about 3 months ago and they said, look, the business is a better place. Our turnover's gone up. We've got this. And I looked at they sent me the accounts, and I was like, this is worse than it was. I was like, you are turning over more, and I get that, but your margins have gone from sort of 38% to 1 or 2%, and they had all the reasons in the world. But I sent it to the accountant, and the business was valued at about a quarter of what it was a year before.
Right.
And I rang them, and it was all friendly, and they're lovely people. But I said, look, one, we can only buy it on what the version you can see documented of basically EBITDA says. And I said, but also a business a year ago might have had a 5 times or 6 times or 7 times value, but with the recession coming, that's gone down to 3 or 4. The market's moved; it's 3 to 4 times. I said, you should have sold it me a year ago. So we've walked away again, and that's okay.
Do you think they might come back again? Or maybe you wouldn't be interested now?
I would be. I mean, if they come back and they're realistic, I think there's nothing wrong. It's a great idea. The concept of the business is a great idea. So if they come back and there's something which I wouldn't go through due diligence again because it gets a bit laborious, but I'd say, look, are you going to be realistic this time? If we go through this process, can we have some commitment? Because,
And probably at that point, you could use a costs underwrite. So if they've misrepresented the business as it is now, because you felt that they've done that in the past, and you then discover during diligence that it still isn't what they've told you that it is, they've got to cover your costs.
Yeah, that's what we'd probably do.
Because they're kind of messing you around at that point, aren't they?
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting your video, but I wanted to introduce you to a great lawyer in the UK who can get your deals done for you. He's worked for 50 of my mastermind clients in the last few months alone. His name is John Andrews, and I've got his details right here in my little black book of contacts. You can phone him on 0345 241 2494, or you can email him on johnandrews.deallawyer@jmw.co.uk. If you want someone who can get a deal done, he is your guy. So let's get back to the video.
I mean, it doesn't cost a lot, but it's not something you want to keep doing every 12 months.
No, absolutely. And it's the time as well, isn't it?
Exactly. It takes a lot of time.
But it's interesting how many people do come back. They want these high values, and quite frankly, if you or I were in that position, we'd probably go for a high value, because you might as well. No point underselling yourself. But it's the way you handle that negotiation that brings it down to a sensible price point. And again, this is a question I get asked a lot on YouTube. People say, I've spoken to some owners and they want these incredibly high prices. What do I do? How would you answer that question?
Well, I met a business about 3 weeks ago, quite local to where I am, which was quite nice, in a similar space into e-commerce and things. And the guys, they're lovely. They were lovely people. The guy was great, ran it for ages. But, he literally was, he said, I was offered 3 million in cash plus deferred consideration only 6 months ago, and I turned it down. And I just said, well, that's crazy. You should have taken it. I said, that's a life-changing amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's like, no, it's not enough. Now the business turns over about what our group turns over, which isn't that. And I was just like, to be honest, if that's your starting point, I said, it's great to talk to you, it's lovely, but there's no point even carrying on talking about buying the business. Let's just talk about business in the Southwest in general. And he's a great guy, and he said, yep, understood. But it was just too far removed. I mean, I think if they're closer and you can justify and say, this is the risk we're taking, or you can offer sort of olive branches of, if you're saying it's worth this and you want that much because it's going to get to a point, you can offer them, percentages of profit for the next 3 years, or
exactly,
things like that. There's lots of options there. I try and explain to people, we can only buy what we can see now. We don't buy a gamble on the future, because we don't know what's coming.
Well, that's quite often how people establish these high values. They say, you're buying this incredible opportunity and it's just going to take off like a rocket next year. I mean, everyone says that. Makes you wonder why they're selling it now and not waiting for another year.
I always ask that.
But it's always this opportunity's around the corner. But you're right, you can't pay for something that hasn't happened, might not happen. The economic climate might mean that it can't happen, and you've got to make it happen. It's you and your team that's going to be doing the work.
Separate people have actually got to deliver something that we don't know about, and it's done on what if. So I always say exactly that. One, if it's going to be that good, why on earth would you sell it? Why don't you just bring someone in to run it? And then I say, look, if you think it's going to be that good, I can't take all that risk. So one, you can help, and two, we'll work out a profit share to get you to a figure close to what you want if it delivers what you say. Yeah. And that's okay too, right? Because if it does deliver, we're all winners then.
Yes. And I think that so many businesses are quite fragile, and they're held together with sellotape and bits of string. Yeah. And if you take the owner out, it can start to crack and crumble and fall apart. And I think many owners do actually recognize that, which is why they want all the money up front. They want to take that money and run away as fast as possible. And then if the ship sinks, you're the captain now, not them.
Exactly, yeah. And they've already put a deposit on a boat or on
exactly. They've mentally spent it, or possibly even physically. So they put the deposit down. They need the rest of the money. So it's about finding the business that is going to continue being profitable regardless of whether the owner is there or not. Yeah. And in Mastermind these days, my approach is to encourage everyone to buy bigger businesses rather than smaller ones.
That's interesting.
Because the bigger business has usually clearer financials, more solid reporting on those financials. It's run more professionally. It has a management team in place. It's less likely to be dependent upon the owner. But with the smaller businesses, it's typically all about the owner.
Yeah.
And you take the owner out and it does start to fall apart. So I always say go for bigger businesses. And even though you can't put an exact number on what that business would be in size, typically when you go $1 million plus, a business that's broken that £1 million barrier has done something right.
Yeah.
They've got something right, haven't they?
Yeah.
And that's what you're tapping into. And that there is a real value there.
Yeah, and that's the proof in what we've done, even with acquisitions. We're well over that barrier, and there is a team in place. One of us, I'm pretty much removed, but, we brought in a new guy. He's running it. If he left, we know we could bring in another new guy, right?
Yes, because the business continues regardless of the personality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and personality is a big thing. People like sort of the culture of a business, and that's bubbled to the surface. But you can sort of keep that culture and empower people within it if there's enough people. I mean, you can't have a business of developers and then make them all project managers, because then you haven't got any developers, for example.
Yes.
So that's the questions we ask. Again, when I spoke to you 2 weeks ago, I've only spoken on the phone. I'm waiting for the accounts to come through. Who runs the projects day to day? Who's the person who deals with the clients? How are you doing sales? And if it's me, you think, I don't want to be past that stick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I had a business years ago called the Coaching Academy, and I started that in '99.
Right.
And people did say to me, is it all about you? Is it the sort of the cult of personality where if you weren't there, people wouldn't become customers and clients? And then some people said, well, Jonathan, if you weren't there, we'd actually have more customers and clients. So it would actually be very good for the business. This is sort of a backhanded compliment. I get a lot of those. So when I sold it, I'd made sure about a year earlier, partly for my own sanity, that it wasn't all dependent upon me.
Yeah.
And I had that management team in place that still needed a bit of a steer to be fair. And I sold that, oh my goodness, 2007. So that business now has been running for we're coming up to 20, by the time this podcast goes out, 24 years.
Wow.
Which I'm very proud of.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But it's been through three owners during the 24-year period. I was one, the people who bought it from me, and then the people who bought it from them. But the business itself continues regardless.
Yeah.
And was that luck? Was that design? Probably a bit of luck and a bit of design.
Yeah.
But having something that carries on regardless is really the ideal business to buy, because you can take out that owner who maybe does one day a week, and you can plug someone else in there, and it just carries on and still produces similar profits, hopefully for another 25
or
years.
even more if you're taking out the owner, right? Who generally think they deserve a bigger salary. So I also think it's, when you look at the accounts, when you look at the day-to-day, what sort of procedures they've got in place, for HR or this, small businesses don't have that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you get a bit bigger, there's
there's enough staff to require some sort of HR discipline.
Yeah,
it can't all be done on a handshake. You've got to have contracts and things like that.
And policies in place.
Yes.
Or this is what happens. This is how we're going to work. Even with our company before we acquired, we had none of that. Classic. But now we've got all of that in place. It's all documented. We've just recruited someone this week. He's starting in January. And there's a set right, this is what happens, down to, this is the machine you have to buy him. This is what he needs to learn. This is, boom, boom, boom. It just works.
And increases the value of your business as well, because a buyer of your business will see a well-oiled machine rather than sort of chaos that is held together by sellotape and bits of string.
Exactly.
And it's interesting that I've felt a shift in the questions I get asked on LinkedIn and YouTube mostly. And the questions always used to be about how do you buy a business?
Yeah.
And the questions now seem to be moving towards, okay, I kind of get how to buy a business. What do I do next?
Right.
So I've got this group going. I call it Inner Circle. Sounds very mysterious. And these are all people who've bought businesses. And our conversation isn't about how do you find a business to buy? How do you negotiate? Yeah, they've done all that.
Yeah.
It's all about how do we raise serious amounts of finance to grow this business into an empire? How do we integrate and consolidate businesses? How do we hire the management team? Those sorts of things. There's a different type of conversation. And if you were to summarize the conversation, it's like what happens next conversation. And I just get this sense that more and more people want to know what happens next. And you've been through that. So if we take that first business that you bought as a case study, if you can cast your mind back 5 years, once you'd bought it, what did happen next?
To be honest, for probably 6 to 9 months, we got the owner. We were going to keep him on for a bit. It is a sort of ad hoc contract, so that didn't work, which we knew it wouldn't. We kept it just business as usual. They stayed in their office with their same team, with their same clients, and I spent quite a lot of time with them, just getting my head into how they were running, what they were doing, what we liked, what we didn't like, and things like that. And I think one person left in that period because they didn't like the change, and there was no change apart from the owners. But
I think it's an excuse. Actually,
yeah, it is.
I think it sometimes with some people, it's these new owners might realise that I'm not doing very much work. They might ask me to do some work. I'm not going to take that risk.
Exactly.
I'll jump ship.
He
now.
actually was dead honest as well. He said he'd been thinking about it for ages, and again, it was
the catalyst, wasn't it? Yeah.
And that was okay too. So we monitored it for a while, understood it, and then after a while, once we didn't want to ruffle the feathers too much, so after about 9 months, we said to the team, right, we're going to move the office because we've got a bigger office, and we're going to put everyone in together. We think that'd be good because they've got a different skill set to you, and you should all bounce off each other and learn things. So we did that in a positive way. And obviously we did all the usual things, the accountants and the bookkeeping was all merged into one instantly just to save all that.
But still a bit of a nightmare though, isn't it?
The bank account was the worst.
Right, right.
I think even 5 years later, we might still be with the old bank because we just couldn't get them to hand it over.
It's archaic, isn't it? The whole process.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter. That's all just works anyway, right? It's just a bank. Who cares who you bank with, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So, and then after we moved into the office, that was the big culture change. I think, we tried to that's when we formed the actual group name rather than two separate companies. We formed Nice Group and said, look, everyone's going to be part of this one thing. You're all going to mix the projects up with some of these other ones in this. It took longer than we thought to do that. But then bringing in new people and promoting existing people into sort of more senior roles, that's the bit that turned it. So instead of being, you're the people who bought the business, it was like this new person's coming in to run the business. And I think that really made everyone sort of sit up a bit and go, okay, right, so there's a new management team coming in. And I think I think that's the whole thing. There's a culture difference between, we just bought your company. We're not that guy anymore. We're the new version of that guy. Right, it's all working. Well done, everyone. And we did things, we got them new machines. Everyone got some pay rise because they were doing quite well and some training and all that. So we did lots of things, we added in flexi time and things like that and work from home policies and all that sort of stuff just to make everyone feel like it's a positive move.
Yes.
But then it was like, right, okay, that's all done now, but everyone falls back into business as usual.
So just new management going back a couple of steps. So you put the two businesses into the same office space. And was that the first time they'd met?
I think we'd taken them out one evening
You'd done
and
a social,
had a beer sort of thing.
Yeah. So they're kind of meeting each other for the first time in an office setting. And it's like, you guys now need to work together. Did you sense a difference in the culture between the two businesses? Did it feel different in some way?
I would say they felt more different than you could ever imagine.
Oh, really?
At first, yeah. I was shocked at how two businesses doing very similar. I mean, basically, they all build websites, whether it's e-com or not. They're still websites, and the fundamental, even the terminology people use for the same thing was just completely different. So I think, and it was interesting when we got them in. I said, right, the point is, guys, can you all sit next to someone you don't really know and do noise? They all sat in exactly the same positions they were in the old office, but just in a bigger office, separate. So then we had to go, no, you'll sit in there, and now you'll sit in there, and like school children in a way.
I suppose they are going to be different because different people hired them.
Yeah.
So you're going to hire people that you think are right and you think are a good fit and you like, because we're unlikely to hire people we don't like.
No, that never happens.
And then the other owner did exactly the same thing. So there's going to be sort of two different, even though everyone designs websites, builds websites, there's going to be two different approaches in terms of attitude towards that.
And even the technologies they use. There's such a vast array of things to pick and choose from we're going to base our company on this. And they both use a similar tech, but it was different variations. So, but they all picked bits off each other, you know. And now it's sort of all is one. I mean, that's all gone now. Everyone just works.
Enough time has passed. Yeah. It's not thought of as two separate companies. Because this integration is the biggest challenge that professional business buyers face. Yeah. So professional business buyers being typically private equity buyers. And that is where a deal can go wrong. So you buy the business, it's all great until you try and put it together with your platform investment, and then it all starts to fall over. And there are plenty of stories of large companies merging, but years later still consider themselves to be working for this company or that company, not this overall new umbrella brand that they've got. But it sounds like you got it right.
I mean, it took a lot longer than we thought, and it was a lot more effort. But I think bringing in some new hires. Any churn in any business, I think we've lost 2 people in the 5 years. Which
that's incredible.
It's pretty good. And gently reminding people what they've got now compared to what they didn't have before. Yeah. They've got a much nicer office. They've, they have much daft things. They've got much a better coffee machine. Right?
Sure. But it counts. It counts a lot.
They've got a work from home policy, So
I had people quit because the kettle didn't work.
Yeah.
That was the reason they gave. They said, you said you were going to fix the kettle. You didn't. You didn't live up to your promises. I don't even remember mentioning the kettle. But the kettle becomes the point of contention.
Yeah, but it's that day-to-day thing. It's basically what they're saying in inverted commas is you don't care about me, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it all comes down to.
And it's very easy as the new owner to walk around and you want to be positive about everything. And you kind of mutter under your breath, we'll fix that. We'll get that fixed. And you don't realise that those words are now etched in stone.
Yeah. You're going to die by those words if you forget, like you said them.
I remember years later, like three years after an operations guy had actually left, people were still quoting what he told them 3 years earlier.
Yeah,
and it's like, Steve's been gone for 3 years now.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to get it especially with that company was, Mark always said we were going to get X. I'm like, but 1, I didn't know about that. 2, I'm not him. And 3, you've never mentioned this before. You could say anything now. And
But you're a good people person, aren't you?
That's probably my sort of, secret sauce.
Yes.
Well, people tell me that. That sounds a bit arrogant. Yeah.
No, you're a good listener. You're empathetic.
Yeah.
And I can see that working really well. So what would you say to someone who isn't? Someone who's listening to this, watching this right now and thinking, well, I can kind of I can go out and find the owner. I can inspire them. I can do the deal. I can put the deal together, but I'm not very good at the people aspects of it. What would you say to them?
I would say to them, really, really find one person in the business. So find that person who is your sort of rock star and bond with one, because it's easier to bond with one than many, right? Mm-hmm. And bond with them and get them to become your advocate, especially if they're within the business, because they're a trusted pair of ears. I think that's probably a way you'd have, because you've got to bond with someone, unless you're Elon Musk right now. But you've got to bond with someone. So just focus and think that person, they're doing a great job.
And promote them.
Offer them a bit more money or, a better job title.
And they become your integrations manager.
Yeah, and they're your envoy, as well.
Yes.
They're your bridge until you get, because people who are less empathetic or less warm to people, that it just takes longer. That's all, isn't it? They'll get there in the end. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in business.
So I had 375 staff.
Right.
And I struggled. I struggled with that. I didn't have a sufficiently strong management team. We really struggled with HR.
Well, yeah.
I mean, finding someone who'd run. I mean, even after a year of buying a business, we still have people on old contracts. I mean, it's just paperwork. I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah, but 375 from 25 or 40 odd different companies.
Yeah.
I mean,
more, yeah.
so there's not 375 people who are all even facing the same direction.
No. And it is more than putting it. I mean, so we put everyone in the same uniform, because you wear a uniform in that type of business. And then I was visiting one of the locations in the Midlands, and there were some people having lunch in the staff room, and I thought I'd go and say hello. And I realised after sort of just chatting with them for a few minutes, they were all wearing different uniforms, different colours. And I said, "So what's going on with the uniforms?" And apparently, the previous owners had changed the colour of the uniform, but some people were still wearing the old uniform, the older uniform, but no one had the new uniform. And I thought, how are things like this slipping through the cracks? It's because no one was on it.
Yeah.
And with the benefit of hindsight, I would have spent more time and money on building that management team, because without it, you haven't got anything else.
Yeah, everyone goes feral, right?
Yes, they do things their own way. That's what you mean, isn't it?
Yeah.
They do things their own way.
The way they've always done it.
The way they've always done it. And you don't keep everyone together on the same path. And if you're trying to build a business, you need consistency.
Yeah, you need to have the same consistency in terms of people and their attitude, so it's got the same culture.
Yeah.
But also in the same, if it's run the same, it's easy to measure things, isn't it? If everything's in an ad hoc way. I've had big conversations this week about, a business and ad hocness just being the killer, because everyone spends their time. It takes more time to make things up as you go along than it does to follow a process.
But it's interesting how sometimes people, staff, respond quite badly to that. They say, well, we don't want to be, we're not robots. We can't all do things the same way. But imagine the staff of a McDonald's saying, oh, we're going to do these burgers how we think we should do the burgers, It just doesn't work.
No.
And you see, I was in a little Italian deli on Saturday lunchtime, and it was chaos in there. And I was actually there for 30 minutes before I got my food. And I thought, what they're lacking here is a manager, because half a dozen young people didn't seem to have any direction. A manager who says, we take the order, we do this, customers happy.
Yeah, you do that, that. It's, again, everything comes down to a process.
Yeah.
And a repeatable process at that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, and I think that was the problem, even with just having, I think 14 people, because there was the team I originally had and the people from the other companies. There was the one company bought where it was more contracts and a sales guy. He was just so used to doing whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, and we'd be like, right, we've got a CRM system, because that's how we measure
salespeople are the worst.
Yeah. Don't. If only we could sell stuff without them. But we say, look, if we can't measure how many calls you're making, exactly, e-commerce, sell everything via online, you'd have to speak to a human. But if you could measure everything and say, right, if you make 50 calls, we always know that will be 4 or 5 deals, right? We always know, and you always know, and we always know when we can recruit, right? We know how much money we're going to make, what's going to come over the line in the next few months. It's not rocket science.
I know.
And then you say, so how many people you rang? 20. Right. Is it 20 or is it 10? Or is it 1?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. It's probably about 18. Is it 18 or is it 1? Well, actually, I think about 12 I've rang. You're like, right, if we keep talking about this, will it end up? Why isn't it in the CRM? And then I wouldn't have to ask you this question. And you wouldn't be looking at me really awkwardly.
Getting salespeople to record things.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a struggle.
And I'll tell you what, this is what bringing in the MD, he's so good at implementing that stuff.
That's good.
It's really amazing. Even down to just developers are rubbish at timekeeping. It's a thing. It's in the culture. Just getting people to do that and just understanding, right? Mm-hmm. But then also putting the clients into a process, our existing clients, and saying, if you commit to us for the next 18 months, that allows me to recruit more, and that means we can do more for you and you'll sell more. And they can't argue with it. So,
Yes.
so all of our bigger clients now, whereas before it was sort of retained business and stuff, this guy's, come in and just gone, actually, I can guarantee income for the next 3 years, which what do we all want with the value of a business, right? We want annual recurring revenue.
So your MD then is putting all those processes in place and making sure people adhere to them. That's the next. So putting them in place is the first step, and then making sure that people actually follow them and stick to them is the second step. But what that also does, it means you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is where the stress comes in business, where you're trying to get people to do things in a certain way because it's for the benefit of the business. And when they do things that aren't to the benefit of the business, you feel that you suffer, and it gives you the headache because it's so frustrating that you're missing out on opportunities, missing out on growth, making mistakes. Usually mistakes
100%.
cost money, all of those things. But if you can say, this is your job to make this happen, that surely must that must allow you to go on holiday and not have to worry. Probably still think about the business, but not worry about it.
Yeah, not panic that it's all going to fall apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is, all of this is, and again, it's a sort of secondary benefit when you acquire a business, knowing I've got this guy now. I know however they're running, he's going to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because that's what he does. Because if you can't measure something, you can't understand if it's going well or not, right? But he's putting all this stuff to go, actually, he has said to me, last month we ran it 47% efficiency. I was hoping to get to 60%. And he's there just going, really sorry, mate. And I was like, yeah, but 3 months ago, we didn't know what that percentage was.
And it's better than if you were there doing it yourself, and you don't want to be there doing it yourself.
Exactly. And we also, when he came in, in the sort of business buy mindset, we said, let's make a 100-day plan for you. You're the MD. I said, treat it as if you've come in and taken over, because that's what you have. You haven't actually bought it, but so we did the 100-day plan.
Yeah.
Down to, right, we've got to get him on the bank. We've got to get him, on company's house. We've got to do this. But also the process is, what do you need to learn in that 100 days? So that same principle of buying a business, we sort of implemented with bringing in the MD.
And the question that people will be thinking, asking their minds right now is, how did you find him?
I was lucky. He was a guy I worked with about 18 years ago.
Okay.
We got on really well. He was like a senior project management then, and we've kept in touch. And I badgered him for about a year. I kept saying, your job looks really boring, mate. And he was like, oh, thanks. I'm like, it does, though, to be honest. Why don't you come and have some fun? And so it was a long process. It was when he committed to doing it, it was about a year of talking. And then when he committed, it was another year before he started. I wanted him
right.
a lot,
Really?
A lot to do with the pandemic and stuff.
Sure. But a game changer.
It is a game changer, yeah. And already you can see he's, even just the planning of recruitment, 3 to 6 months ahead of time, that's a game changer.
Yeah. You or I, as individuals, probably wouldn't do that.
In a million years, no.
Yeah.
I'd wait till the day they've left and go, right,
okay. I get that.
Scratch your head, yeah.
I get that. So this also is going to make future acquisitions integrate easier, because you've got this strong platform that you can plug them into.
But it's also part of the sort of what I offered him coming on board. I offered him equity in the group, and a good chunk of equity as well. And I said, but you are now my boss, managing me, making sure we acquire businesses. So he's holding me to account now, which is great. So we'll have a weekly catch up, like an hour's call.
Interesting.
And he'd be like, right, what's going on with acquisitions then?
So what is going on with acquisitions then? Because we are we officially in a recession? I'm not sure if that's been announced, has it? But I think the sense is
It's coming, isn't it?
We are in a recession.
Yeah.
So opportunity?
Yeah.
Or not?
100%. We talked about this about 3 or 4 months ago within the business. I think there's lots of people out there who, and again, it's helping people, they want out. They're getting nervous, they're tired. They might have lost a couple of clients, or they've created some debt during the pandemic. The bounce back loans have to be paid back, right? They're not personally guaranteed, though. So there's lots of companies who are probably thinking, I've had enough now. And I think we can help them. We can bring them in. We can bring them into the group. We can streamline them because of, the group structure streamlines things. And set people free to do what they want to do next. I mean, that's the mindset. I mean, one of the questions I'd always ask someone is, again, plagiarising what you told us to do, but is, why are you selling? Why do you want out now?
Yeah. Understanding the motivations.
Always conflicts there. The business is doing great and it's growing more than I can imagine. It's like, so again, why do you want out now? So, and I think 2023 is going to be, I mean, even the response now, we've been sending 20 letters a week for the last 4 or 5 weeks, something like, I can't remember. So, I mean, again, a good thing is instead of buying a list or spending the time, we've got a guy who, he's a younger guy, he's, more junior in the business, but we can have that now where we say, right, every week you've got to send me 20 companies you found, starting from where we're based, working outwards. And 1 week it'd be, and it's got to complement what we do. And, he's creating these spreadsheets of week 1, these are the 20 companies. So then all I have to do is go through them, check them on, he does all the company's house stuff, but he's a young guy, you have to look yourself, right?
Yeah.
So you do your bit of, right, okay, they're worth a call or a letter. And we've been sending out letters every week, up to 20 a week, sometimes 17.
So that's a very manageable number, isn't it?
But we're getting a much higher return than we did 5 years ago.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's the bit what's really sort of made me go, wow. The 20 we sent out, not last week, the week before, I think we had 7 replies.
Out of 20?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, people going, hiya, can we have a chat? Now, one of them, we sort of bounced trying to talk to each other. And then I was like, do you want to talk to someone? They go, actually, no, we've changed our mind. That's fair enough, right? They had this moment and then it's gone cold. But yeah, I mean, the first lot, I think we had 3, and then we've always had at least 2 out of 20.
Which in itself is still
for postal marketing
incredibly good. So the opportunities for 2023 would be to do another deal, maybe a couple.
So I've committed to the MD is a minimum of 2 acquisitions a year from next year.
Fantastic.
Minimum.
Great plan.
I mean, I want to do 1 a quarter. That's my sort of internal.
Because now you can do it. You've got the confidence that you've got a good infrastructure to plug into, and you've got someone running the business. Yeah. So when you bought it, you can let them sort out all the stuff that needs sorting out.
They'll do that day-to-day thing. And again, the banks, they'll sort all that stuff out, where I can just go, there you go, guys, here's a lovely new thing. We'll have a meet and greet. We'll all get together.
And then you can reward yourself with a holiday.
Yeah.
And come back when it's all over.
Exactly. Or pay the school fees, one of the two.
Yes.
But you know
what
I
mean?
Yeah. It's I think it's an exciting time, and I think next year, we've got an agreement. The group has to be sort of between 20 and 30 million turnover within 4 years of the MD starting. It's big. I mean, that's double, then double, then double, then double. So we've got
incredible.
Double every 12 months.
And you are saying this to me with the confidence of someone who knows that it's possible.
Well, yeah, because we only have to buy 1 business and we'll double, and then the next business we buy will be bigger, won't it? So
exactly, you can parlay up bigger and bigger and bigger deals.
Yeah.
So I always ask people, what would you say to someone who's watching or listening to this right now, and they've been thinking about making that next step? They've looked at all the free content of mine online.
There's a lot,
and there is a lot, but now they want to take it more seriously, but they're not quite sure. Now, that's a position that you were in a few years back. So what would you say to those people who are sitting on the fence?
I mean, I would say, whether it's either with you and your deal makers, or you need a network of people who are doing this around you to get you going and keep, and mentor you, or not even mentor, someone who is going to push back at you if it's not happening. I think that's the big thing. So for me, the deal makers thing, it was every 4 weeks. If you haven't done what you said you were going to do, someone's, we all had our little groups we bonded with, someone's going, so what do you mean you haven't done it?
Yes.
Or in the sort of thing where, stand up if you've done something, if you're the one who never stands up and says, I've done something, right? So I think...
So it's accountability, isn't it?
It's all about accountability, yeah. And hence now, the remit for the new MD is I'm now accountable to him, not the other way around. I mean, other things he's accountable to me, of course.
Sure.
But on that, he's saying, what have you done, Andy?
So you're going to go out and find at least 2 deals in the next 12 months. He's going to integrate them. You're going to double the size of the business.
Yeah.
Sounds like a very clear plan to me.
Yeah. I mean, in the next 12 months, we'll get to sort of between 4 and 5 turnover. because of that, and then it's easy enough then to go, right,
Yes.
let's buy a bigger, more structured company, which is a much easier thing to buy. So,
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And also, if you're doing that sort of level of turnover at that point, then you've got that increased credibility that helps that sort of deal
Yeah.
get over the line.
and it's also the bigger the company, the less sort of it's my baby, the boss, the owners are,
Sure.
aren't they? They're
It's easier
much
to do
more
the deal.
structured
Yeah,
and
they're less emotionally attached to it.
Exactly, it's just a thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so then those conversations become easier. It's all about, you say we do diligence. This is what the valuation is. There's no personal insult there. They just go, well, I can actually see how that's worked out. It's all done very sort of, pragmatically, I think is the word.
So it's going to be an exciting 12 months.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's really cool, actually.
And I'll get you back in 12 months' time and you can tell us. I'm holding you accountable as well.
You can hold me accountable, Jonathan.
You can come back and tell us
definitely,
about those 2 deals.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of what you've done. I think it's been
thank
a tremendous journey, and I'm very pleased that I've been part of that.
It's life-changing doing what we did with you. I mean, it really is. It changes everything. So, anybody listening, it really does. And that's the honest truth. I'm not one of those who's just going to make it up. It's completely changed what we do. So, thank you.
And thank you, Andy, and I will see you next time.
Yeah.